Welcome to PassFail program. Today we're going to be taking a look at PassFail.java, which is a Java program that asks the user to input their AP Computer Science test score, and in response, we tell the user whether they have passed or they have failed. So let's take a look at this line by line, then we'll look at the output, and then we'll go from there. So first, in the first line, we can see that we have a comment, which is just an end of line comment declaring the file name. Next, we're importing the scanner class from the java.util package using the import statement. Then we're declaring the public class PassFail. So remember that on the AP Computer Science test, every class will be public and a class cannot be private. So this is the class keyword. This is the public keyword, which is an access modifier, and it basically lets the computer know that the PassFail class is accessible to all other classes. And then we have the actual name of the class, which is PassFail. So now going into the body of this class, we have a declaration for the main method. So public static void main string args. So let's look at this word by word. So again, the public indicates that it's accessible to all. The static keyword indicates that the main method can be called upon without creating an object of the class. So that's why we're able to run this program without creating an object of the class. We'll look into creating objects of classes later in the course, but basically the static keyword enables us to run this program without creating an object, which we're not doing right now. And then the void keyword indicates that this program doesn't return anything. So as I mentioned earlier, when you return when nothing is returned, you use the void keyword. If let's say this method was to be returning a string, we'd put the string keyword here. Then main is the method name, and string args will that's something that's standard, and it's known as a parameter. So a parameter is whatever's inside of the parentheses, the argument that the method takes. And then inside the body of the main method, where we have an object reference where we're declaring an s, a variable of scanner type named s, and we're declaring it as a new scanner system.in. So we'll look into why we're using that really in the near future of this course. And then we're declaring a variable called score, which is of integer type, and it's basically just giving this is a variable that will store the user's score on the AP Computer Science test. So next we're gonna prompt the user to enter their score. So we're gonna go system.out.println, enter your APCS score test score colon space, and we're going to prompt them for that, and then whatever they put in, we'll set that value to the variable score using the next int method, which is part of the scanner class. And remember that s is an object reference, and s is an object of the scanner class, so it contains that method. Then we're going to be looking at printing out whether they passed or they failed. So we're just going to put passed. As you can see in the next line, we're going to go system.out.println passed colon space plus, and then whether they passed is true or false. Now what you see may look a little bit different than what you're used to seeing. Usually you're used to checking within the main method whether they passed or failed using an if loop or if statement or something like that, but in this case, we're not going to be doing that because we've just learned about declaring our own method. So now we're going to apply that and see how that works. So so as you can see, after it says the passed string, it adds on check passed in parentheses score. So what this is doing is this is calling the check passed method, and it's setting the argument within the parentheses to be score. And if you remember, score is the integer variable that stores the user's APCS test score. So when it calls the check passed method, let's go take a look at the check passed method right over here, and then we'll come back to this last statement in the main method. So here we have the check passed method, which is declared as private static Boolean check passed int AP score. So let's take a look at this word by word. First of all, the method is private. So as you remember, private means that only methods of this class will be able to access this method. An object of this class will not be able to access this method. So as we look into creating objects out of classes, we'll be seeing how this method will not be accessible. Then the static keyword enables us to run this method within this class without creating an object. So if you remember, we're running this method right over here. We're calling the method right over here. So in order to be able to do that, we have to put the static keyword. Otherwise, this program will not function. So next we have Boolean, and that's basically what this program is returning. So when we it's what this program is returning. In the main method, we have the void keyword because the main method is not returning anything. But the Boolean keyword is returning a value, and the value is of Boolean type. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at. And then we're going to be checking whether the name of the method is check passed, and if we're checking passed, then we'd want to return true or false, and that's why the return type is Boolean. And then in parentheses we have int AP score, which is the parameter. So basically what we're saying here is that when our method is called, our check passed method is called as it is here, as it's called right over here, we want to make sure that they also, within the parentheses of that method call, that they insert a variable that represents an integer or an integer. So because the parameter basically lets the computer know that whenever our method is called, there must be an integer or a variable that represents an integer within the parentheses. And that's why score is over here, because the score is an integer variable, and that's exactly what it's going to be. Fulfilling the parameter requirement. But as we look through this program more, we'll understand it a little bit better. So now into the body of this method, we can see that we start off with an if loop. So if AP score is greater than 0 and AP score is less than or equal to 5. So what this is doing is, remember, because this is the parameter, we're referring to the parameter within the method body. So whatever comes over here, that's what we'll be replacing AP score. But right now, because we're just getting the logic of the program, or the method in this case, we're just gonna you tend to leave it as AP score. So we're saying that if AP score is greater than 0 and AP score is less than or equal to 5. So the purpose of this if statement is to make sure that their AP score is valid, because an AP score can only be from 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So we're just making sure we're doing that, and we're using the conditional AND operator, which is right over here, and we're using this operator. That means that this condition has to be true and this condition has to be true, and if either isn't true, then this entire condition will evaluate to be false. So if it's true, that means that the AP score is 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And if that turns out not to be true, then we're gonna just automatically return false. So if the user gives us if the user gives us a number that's 0 or lower, or 5 or greater, we're automatically gonna return false because that's not a valid score. So that's what's gonna happen. So once, let's say that the user doesn't give a valid score, then it skips all the body of the if statement because the if statement became false, and then in the else block it simply returns false. And when it returns false, you're using the return keyword and you're returning false. False is a Boolean type value, and as you remember, we indicated that the return type would be Boolean. So what's happening is, let's say that I want to say check passed, and I put the score is represented as 6. Let's say that the user inserts that their score is 6. So check passed 6. So then you can replace int AP score with 6, and you can say if 6 is greater than 0, that's true, and 6 is less than or equal to 5. So that's false. And because that's false, this entire condition will evaluate to false, and then it will automatically go to this else block, and there it will automatically return false. So then when it returns false, we'll see that it will go past colon space, and then this will evaluate to be false when score is equal to 6. And let's run that to show you once, and then we'll take a look at the rest of the check passed method. So let's compile and let's run. So I'm just going to say 6 right now because that's the example I gave, and it should print out passed space fail false. So as you can see, it says passed space false, and the reason that happened is because you can basically say check passed 6. So int AP score is equal to 6 because that's what's within the parentheses. So 6 is greater than 0, which comes out to be true, but 6 is not less than or equal to 5, which comes out to be false. So the entire condition comes out to be false. Therefore, the body is skipped, and we move to the else block where false is automatically returned. And because false is returned, this has a value of false, and then passed space false is what comes out to be. So now let's say that the user does give a valid AP test score, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Now we want to check whether the user actually actually passed the test or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to check if AP score equals 1 or AP score equals 2. So remember, the equals symbol does not assign AP score a value of 1. It simply checks whether the value of the AP score is equivalent to 1. It does not change the value of the AP score. So we're checking whether the value of the AP score is 1 or 2, because if it's a 1 or a 2, it's important to know that's when you have failed. 3, 4, and 5 represent when you have passed an AP test. And if you get a 1 or 2, then you have failed. So the reason we're using an OR is because the AP score cannot have two different values. The AP score can't be 1 and 2, so we can't expect AND, because the AP score can only have one value. And if it's a 1 or a 2, they've still failed. It doesn't matter if it's a 2 or a 1, they have not passed. So we're checking if AP score equals 1 or AP score equals 2. So this is the conditional OR operator. And remember, if this comes out to be true or this comes out to be true, then this entire condition evaluates to be true. So let's say that the student got a 1. Then what we would do is we'd return false. So as we return false over here, we will return false, indicating that they have not passed. So the Boolean type that we'll be returning will be false, and then this will have a value of false. Now let's say that they didn't get a 1. So the different options after they've made it past this statement and gotten true is they can have a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And if, let's say, this condition evaluates to be false, then they must have a 3, 4, or 5. And those are all passing scores. So if AP score equals 1 or AP score equals 2, so the AP score is not a 1 or a 2, that turns out to be false. Then we go to the else block, and in the else block it returns true, because the remaining values that are possible for the AP score are 3, 4, and 5. And if the values of them are 3, 4, and 5, then we return true because they have passed. So then I would put passed colon, and then this would have a value of true if score has a value of 3, 4, or 5. So as you can see, when I've invoked this program, that's what you call it, or I've I've invoked this method or called this method. What I'm doing is I'm getting this is automatically replaced or equivalent to the Boolean type in this case, or whatever the return type is. That's what this method call is replaced with. So this method call is equivalent to true or false depending on what is returned by the program. And then remember that score is the argument, which is because there's a parameter over here, we need a score which will replace AP score within the method, and then it will be calculated based on whatever the value of AP score is. So the good thing about parameters is this is where you can get ready for multiple situations. You can automatically replace the parameter within the method with whatever the value the user gives it. So if we check passed, so we're calling the method name, and then within parentheses we're inserting an argument for the parameter. And then once we insert an argument for the parameter, the parameter over here, which is referred to in the method, is replaced with that value. and then the program is run that way. And then this whole thing is replaced by the return, whatever value is returned. So let's run a couple of different examples, and let's see what the results that we get. So let's compile and let's run. So let's say I got a 5. So then I'd enter 5 and it says passed equals true. So then we know, because this was a valid score, because AP 5 is greater than or equal to 0 and 5 is less than or equal to 5. And then we saw that 5 does not equal 1 and 5 does not equal 2. So both of these became false, and therefore this entire condition was false, and we skipped this body. We went to the else part and we automatically returned true. And that's why true was outputted right over here. Let's run it once more. So let's say that I got a 2. I got a 2, that passed as false, because that passed my whether I passed was false, because 2 is greater than 0 and 2 is less than or equal to 5. So this will evaluate to be true. But AP score, it does not 2 does not equal 1, but 2 does equal 2. So this evaluates to be true. And because we're using an OR operator, because one condition is evaluated to be true, the entire thing will evaluate to be true. And then using the return keyword, we're going to return a value of false, and then this method call right over here will be replaced with a value of false. And the last one we're going to be taking a look at is when I give it an AP score of 70, and that's something that's actually not possible. So let me give it a value of 70. And now you can see it says passed is equal to false. So now, because AP score is now 70, because score over here is 70 based on what the user inputs, and then that is equivalent to whatever AP score is, and that becomes 70. And then over here we go 70 is greater than 0. That's true. So this part is true. Now remember, this part also needs to be true for the entire condition to become true. And AP 70 is not less than or equal to 5. So this entire condition evaluates to be false. And then it goes to the else block, where it automatically returns false. And as you can see, when it returns false, the value, this is replaced with this is equivalent to a value of false, and it prints passed : space false. So today we looked at the PassFail.java program, and we saw that we declared another method within a class, and then we called that method in the main method. So we didn't put all of our logic into this method. Remember that all the logic we have, that's put in a separate check passed method, and then in the main method we simply call that. So that's a good way to, as you get with bigger programs, you need to structure everything, because there's a variety of functions and a lot of logic. So that's the typical way. And then we use the static keyword so that we're able to call this method within the class without creating an object of the class. And we use the private keyword because we only want it accessible by methods of this class. And this was the PassFail program, which simply told us whether we passed the APCS test.